Welcome to our video, The History Room.
A room full of founding fathers and a very big paper. Hey guys, tonight we begin with a cozy little gathering in a very hot room in Philadelphia, way back in 1787. Imagine it, 35 men, mostly in their 40s or 50s, sweating in wool coats in the middle of July because air conditioning wasn't really a thing yet. And they were about to write a document that would probably annoy generations to come, the United States Constitution. So settle in, dim the lights, maybe grab a cup of lukewarm tea, and let's float gently into the world of powdered wigs, faintly musty robes, and people arguing about stuff that, frankly, seems complicated even today. This isn't going to be a story about epic battles or dramatic duels. No, we're going to drift through the oddly human, sometimes bizarrely petty, occasionally genius, and mostly exhausting world of the Founding Fathers. Now, first off, let's talk about George Washington. Yes, that George Washington. He's the guy everyone loves because, well, he didn't try to be king, unlike some of the European monarchs he probably read about and rolled his eyes at. But George was also not perfect. He had bad teeth, like really, really bad teeth. So bad that when you imagine him smiling in those portraits, you have to remember he's probably gritting through some serious discomfort. And yet he carried himself with this stoic dignity because why not? The guy had a posture that screamed, I am slightly miserable, but it's okay. I'm leading a country. Next, there's James Madison, a man whose physical stature was, let's say, modest. He was small, kind of scrawny, and apparently very, very quiet. You wouldn't want him to wrestle you in a dark alley. But Madison had a brain that could outthink just about anyone in the room. He was called the father of the Constitution, not because he had a diaper-changing habit. He didn't. But because he literally drafted most of the thing. If the Constitution were a cake, Madison baked most of it. And yes, he probably double-checked the recipe. Obsessively. Now, picture Alexander Hamilton. Loud, opinionated, and extremely dramatic. If Madison was a careful librarian, Hamilton was a fireworks display in silk breeches. He had opinions on literally everything. Taxes, banking, politics, maybe even what type of jam should be served at brunch. He liked to write long, long essays, and he wasn't shy about calling people out for disagreeing with him, which, in a room full of equally opinionated men, probably led to some fun conversations. By fun, I mean exhausting, tense, slightly sweaty debates. But Hamilton had ambition, which makes sense because he grew up in the Caribbean with very little, so everything else looked like opportunity. Meanwhile, Benjamin Franklin, the oldest of the group at a spry 81, was basically your witty, sarcastic grandpa at the table. He loved a good aphorism, could charm anyone into agreeing with him, temporarily, and had a habit of offering practical but slightly weird advice. For example, he suggested that the delegates pray for guidance while working on the Constitution, because why not mix divine intervention with political debates? Franklin also had this knack for surviving everything. Wars, politics, children, controversies, you name it. He was like a historical cat with 9 lives, only significantly more verbose. So you have this room full of personalities that, if you think about it, probably shouldn't have been trusted with anything more complicated than deciding which wine to pour at dinner. Yet here they were, deciding how an entire nation should run. And the Constitution itself, well, it's like the most meticulously argued group essay you can imagine, with footnotes that could probably circle the globe. Now, let's talk a little about the process, because it's kind of funny if you think about it. They weren't all in agreement. In fact, agreement was rare. Some wanted a very strong central government. Others were terrified it might turn into a king-in-waiting situation. Some wanted every state to have equal power. Others were worried big states would run over the little ones like a horse through a puddle. And they argued. A lot. Some days they argued so much that records indicate they probably went home with headaches and subtle grudges. Madison would write in his notes about the debates with the intensity of someone chronicling every slight emotional injury inflicted by a cousin at a family reunion. Oh, and let's not forget the compromises. There were compromises on slavery, representation, taxation, and the infamous Three-Fifths Compromise, which, when you think about it, is just a mathematically weird way of saying, we can't agree, so let's all pretend some people count partially. It's the sort of compromise that makes you shake your head gently and whisper, well, that's historically awkward. Another detail you might enjoy while slowly drifting off: the Constitution wasn't written in 1 week, or even 1 month. No, it was the product of weeks of debate, discussion, backtracking, and probably more than a few naps under the table. Imagine Madison quietly taking notes while Hamilton loudly insists that his economic vision is the only logical path forward, and Franklin chiming in with a wry comment that makes everyone pause, slightly embarrassed by their own stubbornness. Speaking of stubbornness, these men were also products of their time. They were elite, educated, and had the privilege to focus on politics instead of, say, growing food or worrying about epidemics. They liked order, hierarchy, and intellectual debates that could last for hours. And yet, for all their planning and philosophical musings, they were human. They argued over tiny details, got frustrated with slow processes, and probably occasionally wondered why no one would just agree already and let them get back to their comfortable lives. George Washington, ever the dignified chairperson, sometimes found himself quietly glancing at the ceiling, wishing someone would invent coffee IVs to keep him awake. Meanwhile, Thomas Jefferson, who technically wasn't at this particular convention, but whose ideas floated around in the air like a ghost of political theory, would probably have rolled his eyes at some of the compromises. He was busy writing letters elsewhere, but his influence lingered because, well, ideas travel faster than wigs in a summer breeze. And so, slowly, piece by piece, the Constitution took shape. Articles were drafted, revised, debated, and revised again. Each section represents a gentle tug-of-war between idealism and practicality. Do we make it super powerful so it actually works, or do we make it weak so states feel comfortable? Can we please not scare people into thinking we're starting another monarchy? Every paragraph, every clause, is a snapshot of a room full of men, politely and sometimes not so politely, trying to control the chaos of human behavior on ink on parchment. Now, it wasn't all debate and scolding. There were small comments of levity. Franklin reportedly suggested things with a twinkle in his eye, Madison occasionally cracked a faint smile at his own dry jokes, and Hamilton probably just fumed at someone disagreeing with him, because why not double down? These humanizing details are comforting, in a sleepy sort of way, because even people shaping the destiny of a country have the same petty frustrations and tiny triumphs as anyone else. So, as we float gently through this Philadelphia summer of 1787, remember, it's not a story of epic battles or sword fights. It's a story of people, complicated, slightly quirky, often frustrating, and deeply human, trying to write down rules that might just keep themselves from driving each other entirely crazy. And in that room, amid powdered wigs, ink stains, and quiet curses under their breath, the United States Constitution slowly became something more than paper. It became a mirror of the humans who wrote it, brilliant, stubborn, flawed, and occasionally charming in ways only history could truly appreciate. And, well, that's the start of our journey. We haven't even reached the point where states are ratifying it or the public is reading it for the first time. Those are stories for later, when the pace slows and the drama drifts gently into the background. For now, just imagine yourself in that warm room, listening to men argue about representation and compromise,